Welcome to episode 146 of Level Up Your Career with APMG. Welcome to 60 minutes of live questions and answers where your questions drive the show. My name is Stephan Brendel, and on behalf of APMG, I'm your host today. My colleagues Adriana and Ella are in the LinkedIn and YouTube chat, so please let us know your name and the city from where you join in. They will post a link for you to vote up the questions that you would most like answered, and of course, for you to add your own question. If your question is selected, your name will appear in the credits at the end of the show, so get yours in early and stay with us to see that happen. Now, today's topic is how to create double the value in half the time. Isn't that something we all would like to see as a regular outcome and not just as an exception? Well, we have a panel of experts who are sharing their views and experience and can really help us explore this promising value proposition. Sounds interesting? Well, then let's get started and meet our panel. Hello, panel. I want to start with Johann Botha. He's the CEO of getITright. He's a lifelong lean advocate who has built a career on helping organizations change for the better. Specializing in building digital age capability, Johann describes himself as a digital change provocateur. Johann is joining us from Johannesburg in South Africa. Welcome back to the panel, Johann.
Thank you, Stephan. So a provocateur, another word for that is a stirrer.
All right, thank you. We also have on here is Laurie, Bowman. His career has spanned management and leadership roles in complex multidiscipline engineering and construction projects. Now responsible for project portfolio planning and control at Synchrony projects in Brisbane, Queensland. Laurie knows firsthand the talent inclusivity can tap into for teams and organizations. Hello, good to see you, Laurie.
Very good to be here. Thank you, Stephan, and welcome listeners and fellow panelists.
Right, yeah. We have Mart Rovers with us. He's the president of INTERPROM in Phoenix, Arizona, where he leads teams in both Europe and the United States. Mart's work now focuses on leadership coaching, but is built on a lifetime contribution to local and international service management groups, where members help each other with innovative solutions to real business problems. Welcome back, Mart.
Stephan, thank you so much for having me. Thank you, APMG, for putting another event together like this one. And thank you to all the viewers and listeners for tuning in. Can't wait to answer all the questions about value. Speaking of value, John Maxwell once said, to add value to others, one must first value others. I thought that might be enough to start thinking.
Thank you. For those of you out there who haven't seen Mart Rovers before, he always comes up with the quote. So thanks for the quote today, Mart. We also have completing our panel, Patrick von Schlag. He's the president of the Deep Creek Center in Highland, Maryland, and focuses on helping his clients adopt leading practice across the agile world into service management and beyond. A regular contributor to Level Up, he has worked with over 400 organizations to help them achieve more with better business analysis. Welcome back, Patrick.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here. I'm looking forward to engaging the panelists and especially to being able to answer any of the questions from the people watching the program.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. I think we have a lot of questions today. And our question master for today is my colleague, Charlotte Miller, who's joining us from the Reading area in the United Kingdom. Welcome, Charlotte. And may we have a first question, please?
You can. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Level Up show. Our first question for today is from Christopher. Christopher asks, I manage a team. What are some of the ways I can ensure my team is adding value in a collaborative manner, yet maintaining processes and procedures?
Well, What a great question to start with. Now, Patrick, why don't you kick us off with this one, and then it's Johann, and then Laurie.
So there are different kinds of work. And one of the things we want to differentiate are standard types of work that should follow standard processes and procedures from more innovative types of work where facilitating collaboration, communications, and experimentation becomes a more important part of it. So part of extracting value in those scenarios is just being able to assess when to apply different mental models to approach solving problems like
All right. Thanks for your insight here. And let's continue with Johann.
Yeah, I think that the question itself actually has got an answer in it. Part of it is being collaborative, and understanding what value is from a customer's perspective. And you're not going to do that unless you collaborate with your customer and ask them questions and understand the business of the business. And then I just want to add to Patrick's comment that processes and procedures really important when doing standard work, but don't forget that there are times where it's much better if you consider going a little bit out of the box and think of new, different ways of adding value for customers.
All right, thanks, Johann. I understand. So processes and procedures are by no way dogmas, and have to be considered carefully, not always being the leading point. Okay, Laurie, what's your view on that question?
I agree with the previous panelists and would add that really processes and procedures don't need to be seen as something that's separate to collaboration. If the intent is for collaboration, particularly for the more complex sort of activities that Patrick was describing, the process and procedures should articulate that collaboration is required, representation from A, B, C, D, etc. So they're really not competing interests or anything like that. I think procedures and processes should convey the extent of collaboration that's needed where they are required.
All right, thanks, Laurie. And completing the round of answers today for this question, Mart, what is your response?
I'd like to add to the great answers already given that these processes, procedures, they should have built in this collaborative nature or spirit. Otherwise, you don't have the wrong process and procedures. In other words, there's no collaboration because of that. The other part I would like to mention is that what helps is if when the team has, let's say, a shared mission or purpose, so the team knows what they're aiming for, and therefore is in itself already, ensuring there's collaboration because we're all aiming for the same thing. And then if you have processes, procedures that are going to measure the achievement of that purpose or mission, then everything is aligned. In other words, the team will be successful.
Right. Thanks, Mart. Yeah. And probably Christopher did not necessarily mean to distinguish between process, procedures, and collaboration. I think the panel made this clear. I think one of the best examples for a collaborative process is the agility itself, which is a process and is all based on collaboration. Thanks. Charlotte, may we just have our next question, please?
You can, Stephan. The next question is from Chuck Stanton. Chuck asks, when is the best time in a project to focus on value?
Okay, so we start with Johann, then Mart, then Laurie, and Patrick.
I'll make it easy right from the beginning.
Okay, that's it? Right. Thanks. Anybody else to add anything on that? Mart, how about you?
I definitely agree. Indeed, it starts. If you already don't have the value from the beginning, then it only gets worse later on. But I would say you have to remain focused on the value throughout the whole project. You don't want to derail halfway and say, well, we're going to just build in whatever we feel like building in, or just no longer, losing that focus. So staying focused throughout is something that sometimes not even comes from within the project. Has to come from, let's say, an outsider, so to speak, or an outside observer, or somebody who's looking from outside in. So I would say it's throughout, but definitely starts from the beginning.
Right. Good. Thank you. And then we hear from Laurie.
I don't really have much to add. Really, it's the greatest opportunity to influence is at the start, and that's when important. It continues throughout. There may be special milestones, such as a stage gate review or something like that, where there might be a particular focus to clearly convey value, but the focus to be there all the way through, particularly when any key decisions are being made.
All right. Thanks, Laurie. And Patrick, is there something you would like to add?
Just to talk about the idea of value as evolving during a project's life cycle. And when you begin a project, you do the best you can to understand the customer's vision, to understand what we think the customer wants, and to begin the journey of building a solution. And at the very beginning of a project, we know the least we're ever going to know about what the problem is or what the solution should be. And so part of being adaptive is acknowledging that value evolves and changes in real time, really, as the world changes and the dynamics change. And ultimately, that as we learn, that it creates new opportunities to extract value and to facilitate better outcomes because we learn more, because we know more than we did before.
All right. Okay. Thanks, panel. And I think we just move on to the next question.
Thanks, Stephan. So the next question is from David Moses. David asks, what are the one or two things critical to creating twice the value in half the time?
Okay. Johann, Laurie, Patrick, you have raised your hand. So Johann, start us off maybe with the same short answer. Hello?
Number one, know what value is from the perspective of your customer. And number two, stop doing things that doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, thanks. I love that. With your short answers, we can get up to 50 questions in the show. That's great. Thanks. So let's hear from Laurie.
Well, there's so many. It's difficult to restrain it to two. Two critical things for me is really open-minded. Having an open-minded approach, particularly early in a project or where you're solving a particular problem, really can help unlock opportunities to create value in much faster time. It's cost. And I guess the other systems thinking. So really thinking outside of the box, thinking of some of the unintended consequences that might be happening, and figuring that out up front better sets up your to deliver value down the track.
Okay. Well, thank you. And then let's hear from Patrick.
So you might want to start by looking at all of the different stakeholders who engage in a particular product or service, and that each of those stakeholders brings their own spin on what is valuable to them and how they extract value both objectively and more subjectively. And I would suggest that perhaps secondly, the key thing to keep in mind when you're creating value is that it's a dynamic issue, right? So value evolves as time and as solutions need to evolve to meet changing conditions. So it's important to bring that adaptive mindset to be able to look, as Johann described, at all of the interactions in complex systems, how structures drive behaviors, drive outcomes, and ultimately where and how can we experiment to extract better value from the solutions we provide.
All right. Thanks all for this question when we just jump into the next one.
Thanks, Stephan. Our next question, I think, might be from one of our panelists, Johann. And Johann asks, what is value?
Okay, short answers and short questions from Johann. That's what we can see here. So what is value? Come to you last, Johann, and start with Patrick.
So value, of course, is both objective and subjective, right? Objectively, can I get some result or some outcome that I want? Subjectively, how does it feel to do that? Right. And of course, value evolves. The value of my jumper cables in my automobile might be much larger if my battery is dead and I need to be able to jump my car than if they're sitting in the back of the car for multiple years and I never use them. So value is context driven. And so it's important to think about how context drives value for particular stakeholders.
All right. Thanks. Johann, there are quite a few definitions out there. What is value? But I want to hear from you now as you raised the question.
I think all that I want to add to that is that unless you understand that context really well, when the customer contacted you to help them with something that obviously we're trying to get some outcome, unless you understand what that outcome is, you're most probably going to come up with a half-baked solution.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So I love the fact that it's context-driven, and it's like beauty; it's in the eye of the beholder, right?
Okay. Good. Well, I think Mart has raised his hand. I spotted that, and probably wants to add something to what you just said.
Johann just mentioned exactly the words I was going to say. It's in the eyes of the beholder. It's what is of value for one person may not be of value to somebody else. It really depends on who you're talking to and who you're dealing with. What is of value, and also at what moment in time are we talking about? What is value? Like Patrick was talking about the jumper cable not being of value when the battery is doing well. Value is often expressed in monetary aspects. In other words, it's money related. It doesn't have to be. So to give you some examples as far as what is value, tangible value, intangible value. Tangible being, maybe monetary value, but intangible could be like something that makes you feel good. It could actually be psychological value, and a feel good a moment can be of value to you. There's a qualitative and quantitative value, as in if you respond quickly to a request that's of quality. I mean, that's you can also make that a quantity as far as how often do you respond quickly. In other words, there's many ways to express value. And again, it depends on who you're talking to as far as what is that value.
All right, thanks for that. I mean, we're making progress here. We're doubling the value on this show by covering as many questions as we can, probably. But we're still using the 60 minutes that we have. But I want to check with our team here, with our social media team, to see who's watching us. So we have Gabriel from London. Hello, welcome, Gabriel. Good to see him. Hopefully we get some questions. Mary from Reading, from the UK. And there is Trinad from Uganda. Hello, Trinad. Nice to have you here on the show. And there is, don't get that, Sausen Aoudi from Tunisia. I know Tunisia, but sorry for my bad pronunciation. And I wonder if we have some live questions. There's Leigh from also from South Africa. No, she's celebrating your South African humor, Johann. So that one's for you, probably. And there's Marion van der Dijl watching from Hausen in the Netherlands. That's where I'm currently based in. Mark Thomas from Phoenix in Arizona. Hello, Mark. So we have quite a few viewers here. And I wonder if we can look if one of those viewers have actually raised a live question. Charlotte, if we could, please. And hi, Lindsay from the UK.
No live questions at the moment, but we do have another question from Johann. I'm sorry, I'm picking on you today. How do we measure the value customers get?
All right. I see Patrick raising his hand, so why don't you start it off here, Patrick?
So to play on what Johann was saying, one of the previous answers, of course, it depends on the customer, and it depends. Some parts of these, to Mart's point, might be quantitative in terms of financial returns on investment. Some of them might be more qualitative around, perceptions of quality, customer satisfaction, which then may lead to things like repeat business rates and things like that. Part of any initiative is actually figuring out from that customer's perspective what is valuable to them. How do they choose to manage and measure a successful outcome? Right? Some of that will be quantitatively driven. A lot of it is about perception, though. And so it's important to understand and think about, well, how do we really understand customer experience or user experience? How do we really understand whether or not the customer perceives our solutions as effective and easy to use? They not only produce the result, but they do it in a coherent way.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, and I think it's quite difficult sometimes to actually get the measurable expectations from a client. I've seen this in projects where they try not to define anything, so you can always. Well, then it's a bigger matter of perception of value instead of something that has been defined as an expectation. But Mart, let's hear from you.
As Patrick already mentioned, as far as the value that needs to be defined. An earlier question was about, so when do we talk about value early on the project? That's when, that would be a good moment to talk about it. The BRM Institute actually has put together something that's called a value plan. And so when there is this idea to start an initiative to make something better, let's say, that may result into a project, they actually recommend that you talk about value the moment you have that idea, as far as what's the value of this idea. And the very first step in when you ask that question is define the value. Be specific about the value. Is it tangible, intangible? Is it qualitative, quantitative? Is it psychological value? And once we have an agreement on that, Patrick's answer, as in customer perception, customer experience, of course, that's going to heavily influence that definition of value. You start defining value and eventually measuring value. Measuring value, actually, yes, it may start throughout the project, but actually continues after the project completion. How often do we see that we think we have something that's fantastic and that goes live and nobody worries about the value anymore? Again, for the BRM Institute, as in this needs to continue after go live, and you measure value for as long as you want to measure. How often and who needs to take a look at it. So this idea around defining value starts very early on, and then you continue measuring it. It may change, like Patrick mentioned a couple of times as well, over time. But it keeps you focused on what is value and what is of value right now, and how do we measure it? Because measuring value is something that more and more organizations are doing these days, which is a great trend to see.
Yeah, it's true. Patrick, I understand you want to reply to Mart.
Just to follow on real quickly, when organizations produce a business case for whether or not to even consider doing some project or program, they should clearly be thinking about the costs, the risks, the value proposition as to what they're really trying to achieve, because they have to, of course, manage trade-offs. They may have 50 legitimate business cases and need to have resources for 6. So they have to be able to consider, the relevant aspects of different types of value and outcomes, some of which are traditional return on investment type, metrics, some of which are much more value on investment. And maybe compliance with legal and regulatory rules, maybe mitigating certain types of cybersecurity risks. So there's a lot of different types of methods that you can use to think about value from the perspective of individual customers and users, from the perspective of an auditor, from the perspective of shareholders and owners who have expectations for return on their own investments in capital. So when you think about value, part of the challenge is value for whom? Because there's all these different stakeholders and they have their own ideas about what value looks like from their point of view, right? And to borrow the lean idea, if I'm actually going to produce what they call a value stream, the value has to stream to everyone. So what is the value proposition from each of those stakeholders' points of view?
All right. Okay, thanks. Mark, you want to give feedback to Patrick again?
I'd like to build on that as well, indeed. So we're playing tag here, but Patrick mentioned the word business case. And I can imagine that the audience may wonder, as in, so I would talk about value plans, business case. Something I'm teaching in the BRMP course of the BRM Institute is that when there is this idea, that certain ideas may need a value plan, meaning as in, hey, is this worthwhile doing based on the value it may produce? And some of these ideas that have a value plan may need a business case, as in, well, wait a minute, we're looking here at, let's say, $500,000 investment, whatever your threshold is. In other words, let's create that business case. That value plan will be attached to that business case. The business case eventually will end the moment that project goes live, but the value plan continues to live on to make sure that we actually start measuring value, the projected value against the actual value. So I would just want to clarify, there's a few things going on here. They're all distinct, in other words, but they also, of course, relate to each other and support each other. Ideas, value plans, business cases, just for clarification.
Yeah, thanks, Mart, Patrick, the panel for great answers, and Johann for this question that actually might be even valuable for our own show. You wanna add something to it?
Okay, I just want to quickly finish off. Just because it's difficult to define doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Don't worry if it changes; it will. One of the tools that we use quite a lot in projects lately is to look at customers' jobs to be done. And we define value in that context, helping a customer to get a job done. And quite rightly so, there's different types of jobs. There's real jobs, and then there's psychological jobs, and then there's social jobs. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So don't think because you can't measure something in dollars and cents that it's not something to do. Yeah, those psychological and social jobs that may be part of the solution is extremely important.
All right, thanks, Johann, and let's move on to the next question.
Thanks, Nigel. I say Nigel, sorry, Stephan. We've got a question from Sandesh Mehta. I think it summarizes the whole show, the whole episode. Time quality trade-off suggests quality decreases when speed increases. So how then can we deliver twice the value in half the time?
Oh, Sandesh, that is really a thrilling question, and I think Patrick wants to start with giving an answer.
I just want to begin with an initial suggestion, which is that not all goals are the same in value, right? So when you consider all the different things you might do, some of them are disproportionately valuable and disproportionately important. So one of the premises of getting twice the value in half the time is focusing less on activity and some randomized list of things to do and focusing instead on value and prioritization. What goes first? Which things produce the most disproportionate value for your customers and other stakeholders?
All right, thank you. And let's hear from Laurie.
So it's an interesting one. So value doesn't always involve the trade-off between quality or value and time. And innovation is really the opportunity there. So looking for opportunities for synergy first, where you can actually have higher value in faster time. And when you can't get there, that's when sort of trade-offs is similar to the quality time trade-off. So examples of getting things faster, more value faster, are things like Google Maps, for example, as a way of navigating around. It's cheaper, faster, saves us plenty of time compared to the way we did things in the past. ChatGPT being another great example where a lot of information can be gathered very quickly at a better quality, not always, but in many cases in far less time. And of course, the AI revolution and all sorts of other innovation are highly likely to give us plenty of opportunity to both increase the value and decrease the time simultaneously.
All right. Yeah, good point and good thinking. I think we have Johann next on our list.
So I want to tag on to Laurie there. He mentioned, everybody so far mentioned it, this issue of doing the things that's most valuable first. And if you think about it, that's actually how most of the agile methods work. Yeah? It's the purpose of a product backlog. We stuff that's going to create the most value on top, and we focus on that first. Just adding a little bit to that, and that comes from the lean community, is really this issue, and I really want to implore people to start looking at work that's done within their environment. Stop doing things that doesn't create value. Yeah, just because you've always done it that way, or the process says that it must be 10 steps, but you can do it in 5. Change the process. If you do those things, it's fairly easy to actually get double the quality in half the time.
Yeah, so in a way it is like, say, when half of your supposed values aren't really values and you just drop them, then you have already doubled. Is that what you say?
Yeah.
In a way, okay. Thank you. All right, well, I think we have a lot of live viewers joining our show today, and I want to welcome everyone who joined a little bit later. Believe me, this is a great panel. We have great questions and a lot of very comprehensive, good answers. If you want your question to be answered here on this panel, now's your chance. This is the time to raise the question, put it in the chat, and you won't believe how fast it is coming up here on the panel. All right, so that we have from Pittsburgh, a LinkedIn user. Hello, nice to have you here. Yeah, Marie Teresa from Teresa Miles. Good afternoon. Well, good afternoon to you. It sounds like you are rather in the US or rather in Europe. Greetings from Cambodia. Birand, hello, Birand. Nice to have you here. And I think we should continue and wait if somebody of you guys out there raise a question live. Like I said, it's going to be in lightning speed here on the panel. But let's see, Charlotte, what else we have from those questions that had already been recorded.
Yes, thank you very much, Stephan. Our next question we have from Meredith. And Meredith asks, when are people motivated to create value, not only for themselves, but also for others?
All right, let's start with Laurie and then hear from Patrick and then from Johann. Okay, thanks, Charlotte. So
thank you, Meredith. This is a really interesting question. And I think by human nature, we're actually intrinsically motivated to create value together for others. We tend to be social creatures. We cooperate well. We work together on projects, for example. Sometimes we might be a little bit selfish and focus on ourselves, but holistically, I think we're very much motivated at creating value for others as well. And one of the great examples of this is, the sustainability movement that we have at the moment, where there's much more consideration of other forms of valued outcomes other than economics. So rather than just the financial aspect of a business case, social value is receiving a lot more weighting and consideration, as well as environmental value for the benefit of future generations. So that's a good example where we're actually thinking about others, not just others who are here now, but others who are likely to be here in the future. There's actually a really good new project management standard, the P5 Sustainable Project Management Standard, which has just come out as well, which really does help break down some of these different values and how we can run projects in a way that we're considering others. We're considering the social aspects and the environmental aspects, so the ecosystem, the animals, nature as well. So a really good question, but certainly I believe we really do care about others, and the way that we're running projects is starting to show that more explicitly.
Thanks, Laurie, and I agree from my heart. In particular, because value is, like you say, not just about money. I think nobody can create value for him or herself without creating value for others. It's not possible. Even if you are a 100% narcissistic person, you wouldn't create value. You would create something, but not value, without creating value for others. That's at least my view. So, but anyway, let's hear from Patrick.
So this is a wonderful question for a lot of different reasons. One is that it talks about motivation, right? And so what creates motivation for people? There's a lot of research about things like this. And so, of course, it begins with having clear shared goals, having clear visions about what we as a team are trying to do. And then as we begin and work on the way through our journey, it becomes a very important part of the motivational aspects of it to be able to clearly connect the dots between the work that your people do and real value for real stakeholders. Here's how your work is producing and making real change that matters, right? Most people are motivated by being effective, by knowing that the work and the investments and the efforts that they make produce real results in the world for real people, right? And so whether you're managing a project like that, whether you're trying to champion a project for an organization, remember that ultimately it's all about people. And so we want to spend significant time thinking about how to create that visibility so that people can connect the dots between the work they do and the real results it creates.
Thanks, Patrick. Good thinking here. Let's hear from Johann and then from Mart.
I think most of the things has been said. I think it's also important for people to get the opportunity to realize that when you create value for others, you create value for yourself. How you grow, how you learn, how you become. I mean, I'm quite sure all of the panelists are here not to, because they like out of their time to answer questions only, but we learn from each other. Yeah, and it motivates us if somebody says, "Oh, that was cool. I learned something today," or "That really helped me with something," or and that's why I love teaching. Yeah. I'll never not be in a classroom at such.
Yeah, Claire, can see this. Yeah, Mart, please.
Just quickly about the project methodology that was mentioned earlier, as far as the half-double certification that the APMG organization puts forward. Just want to put that out there. Another certification I was referring to earlier is the BRMP, and what I've done teaching myself. But what I want to emphasize on is the fact that more and more people entering the workforce these days are very much aware of their personal purpose And of course, that's a huge motivator, as in, my reason for being as a human or as a person. And more organizations actually are more focused on having a purpose statement, as in, why do we even exist as an organization? So that word purpose is surfacing more and more organizations, besides having a mission and vision, they also now have a purpose. Now, if you combine or align that personal purpose with that organizational purpose, huge motivation is right there. As in, I feel this is my place. I feel this is my organization. This is where I belong. And because my personal purpose is aligned with the organization's purpose. In other words, then a lot more be accomplished because of that. That's a huge motivator.
All right, thanks, Mart. And actually, you were providing the recommendation I wanted to give is that, like, the half-double certification, and as well the business relationship management professional. And you will find links to those in the chat, where you can actually just follow up on if you want to know more about this. So, and here's the QR code for the half-double certification. Well, let's move on to the next question then.
Thanks, Stephan. I can see that we're getting some live questions now from our viewers. So I'm going to move on to not one of those, but one that's been submitted just before the show. Another one from Sandesh Metha, who asks, the value of products and services is always changing. How can we create value with so much change happening?
All right. So Patrick and Laurie. Patrick, please start us off here.
So Sandesh is absolutely right. The value of any product or any service is always changing. So this implores us to create fast feedback loops. How do we learn what's working, what's not working, what else is needed? And ultimately, remember that value is this changing commodity. As the world moves, as threats change, as competitive pressures change, as regulatory rules change, we have to be able to adapt along with that. The good news part of the story is it creates lots of opportunities for innovation, lots of opportunities to help organizations achieve even better value than they had anticipated, because they can learn more quickly and they can adapt more quickly.
Thank you, Patrick. And let's hear from Laurie.
Yes, so I agree with everything that Patrick said. And as Mart was mentioning earlier, value is something that we're continuously monitoring throughout a project or any sort of product life cycle. So whether it's through a risk framework or whatever it is, the intention should be to continuously checking in, reassessing both for opportunities, emerging technology and those sorts of things, as well as emerging risks. So it's a very dynamic process, managing value, but certainly with a lot of change happening, that really does create the opportunity for innovation and more value creation. So a really good question. At the end of the day, the level of change is really, particularly in terms of technology advancement, is creating that opportunity for more value.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks, Laurie. And we hear from Johann.
Yeah, I think that the trick here is to have constant feedback and have your feedback cycles as short as possible. So if you look at something like Scrum, for instance, the 3 fundamental values is to be transparent, to collaborate with people, and to get feedback as quickly as possible, and then be able to do something about it. If you ask people if it's still valuable or not, they will tell you. Unfortunately, customers can sometimes not tell us what's valuable before they've seen it. Yeah, so you'll have to dig a little bit deeper. But ask.
All right. Yeah, absolutely true. Thanks, Johann. Charlotte, I'm curious. You mentioned we have a live question, at least live questions coming in. I would like to have or see one of those live questions.
Certainly can. Stephan, we've got a live question from Mark Thomas. Mark asks, what do you view as co-creation, and what are your top tips to engaging with stakeholders to understand their expectations before work is started?
All right. Thanks, Mark, for these questions. All four panelists have raised their hands and are keen to answer. So let's start with Laurie, Patrick, Mart, and then Johann.
So this is a great question. And as projects are getting more and more complex, systems are becoming more and more integrated. We're starting to think more about social impacts, environmental impacts, as well as technical and economic impacts. The more we can have a diverse range of stakeholders involved right at the very problem definition, even before the solution starts to get developed, the better. Often there's parallel problems that can be solved together with one solution. So as much as possible, having that diverse range of perspectives involved as early as possible, defining the problem and preliminary solutions would definitely be my tip.
All right. Thanks, Laurie. And let's hear from Patrick.
The value co-creation helps us acknowledge that our technical solutions are not the value proposition in and of themselves. It's a combination of things we do and things they do that ultimately produces something useful, that produces something valuable. So when you start thinking about engaging your stakeholders, ask plain questions. Talk to me about the work that you do. How do you measure success? How are you measured in your performance in your organization? How does technology help you? What makes a technology easy to use for you? What makes technology not used for you? Makes a good day or a bad day? And how do you make informed decisions based on that?
All right. Thanks, Patrick. Good tips coming in here. And let's hear from Mart.
So the moment somebody has an idea or wants to suggest making an investment in an improvement, for example, the second question should be what's the value, that you have in mind, and how we're going to define the value and measure the value over time. So that's where it all starts, again, from the very beginning. To me, that's something that more organizations are doing, and that would be my tip.
All right. Thanks, Mart. And let's then last hear from Johann.
Three quick things. First of all, yes, it's important to do it before you start, but don't forget to keep on doing it. Number two is create lots of opportunities for people to give you feedback, all of those stakeholders, in terms of their value perception and how their world is busy changing. And then I want to just highlight again one of these techniques that we use to help us understand how value is created in organizations, and it's called jobs to be done. I think there's a QR code also for a great resource on jobs to be done that Nigel can show us.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks. Okay, good. So I think we have time for one more question. Time's running for us. And I would like to ask Charlotte if we can have the next question, please.
Certainly can, Stephan. Sandesh got another question from this viewer. What methods or tools can be used on projects to create more value? I think I could make a couple of suggestions. I think we've mentioned them already.
Yeah, let's start. True, but let's make it short and quick answers using Johann's template. Let's start with Patrick, Laurie, Johann, and then for Mart.
So Mart has already mentioned the idea of a value plan. That's a very critical way of thinking about how we measure and extract value through not only the life cycle of a project, but ongoing as the product or service is delivering in the environment and generating the results it's supposed to.
All right. Thanks, Patrick. And Laurie?
Or I guess my bullet point response would be having a really good value or a stage gate process that's focused value, as well as a risk management framework that both encourages innovation but also protects value as the project is going through its life cycle.
Right. Thanks, Laurie. And let's hear from Johann.
3 quick things. The principles of Scrum. Be open, inspect, and adapt. We've already mentioned during the conversation doing something like a value stream map, so that you can understand how value is created, and it also shows you where there's waste within the process. And the last one I've already mentioned that we use quite a lot is jobs to be done.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Great. Well, Mart, why don't you complete?
Yeah, just a quick one. Unfortunately, it's still the case that organizations are cost focused and not so much value focused. So to me, that means there's a cultural challenge going on in these organizations. So that would be my method or tool, so to speak, as in shift that focus away from cost and focus a lot more on value. Make that cultural change, in other words.
Yeah. And I think it's also all about the values that become more important. I think Laurie mentioned them, like it's not just the financial value, it's social, psychological, environmental values that are important. And that gives it I think that gives it a much better perspective. Well, great. I'd like to thank you all for the excellent questions that came in today. And there's still more I can see that we won't be able to cover. You've done a great job. And if you raise the question, watch out for your name in the credits if it was selected. My dear panel, it's time for your closing remarks. So let me begin with Patrick.
So most people focus on what I call activity. What are all the things I have to do? Right. And so they often conflate being busy with being effective and delivering good value. So focus on value requires a focus shift. Who are the stakeholders? What are the desired outcomes? What do they value? How is that different from stakeholder family to stakeholder family? And working backwards from that makes our work more effective and produces a higher value result. So if you want to get twice the value in half the time, work backwards from your customers and stakeholders, and it will produce a roadmap for you into what gives them the best value.
Thanks, Patrick. Good thinking here. And let's hear from Mart, closing remark.
Great questions indeed. Thank you again, APMG, for putting this together and for having me. I appreciate that opportunity. One more quote and a book recommendation that was already mentioned in the QR codes at the bottom. It's a book written by Peter Nichol, Leading with Value, How to Effectively Communicate Business Value. Something I highly recommend for the audience to consider. Speaking of leading, Warren Buffett once said, price is what you pay. Value is what you get. Closing remark.
Yeah. True. 2 quotes today, Mart, from you. Great stuff. Right? Thanks. Thanks. And let's hear closing remark from Laurie.
First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity to participate. I really enjoyed listening to receiving the questions and listening to the responses from the fellow panelists. I guess the key things for me is really the opportunity for us to use technology to model our reality and to create value far more effectively, far more quickly at far lower cost than we have in the past. And secondly, I'd like to remind listeners of the P5 project management standard. Really has an excellent categorization system for the forms of typical business value being environmental, social, and economic, and has a nice little breakdown that's particularly if you're starting to transition with all of the new mandatory reporting requirements and things like that, can really be helpful for setting up your projects in a way that's tracking value from all of those perspectives. So thank you for the opportunity to participate.
Very welcome, Laurie, and thank you. And let's hear from Johann.
Well, thanks, APMG panelists, and most importantly, those of you who are listening. because without you, we wouldn't have a conversation. I'm going to end the way I started. Focus on the things that makes the most difference. Do them first, and stop doing silly things that you shouldn't be doing. As always, I'll close with a quote. What the customer buys and considers valuable is never a product. It's always utility. That is, what a product or a service does for a customer. And that's my favorite management thinker, Peter Drucker.
Right. Thank you very much. And thank you all, panel, for being here and helping us to create this very good show. And I would like to finish with my colleague Charlotte, who's helping here with being the question master, with all the other colleagues in the background, like Nigel and Ella Adriana, who is managing all this. The show wouldn't work without them, so it's always worth to be mentioned. But Charlotte, what's your closing remark for today?
My closing remarks are to say a big thank you to our viewers. I'm sorry that we couldn't get to the live questions that were submitted at the last minute. Thank you to our panelists for such an engaging show. And just a reminder that APMG offers, in conjunction with the Half Double Institute, a very fantastic certification that does have the 3 levels. So training and certification is available in conjunction with Half Double Institute, and we do have several accredited training organisations offering this qualification and training.
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. Good to mention that. Well done, everyone. And by the way, I want to mention this. Over on our website, you can search for answers to more than 1,500 questions that have been raised on a show like this. It's a comprehensive free resource connecting you with more than 170 experts from around the world. That community is really growing. If video isn't your first choice, you can also listen to the audio versions of the shows on your preferred podcast platform. Please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, and it really helps new folks discover our content. What's next? Looking forward, right after the weekend on Monday, 17th April, at 8 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, we turn our attention to how to become an agile leader. Agility is one of the most sought after and relevant skills to have to start your project management career. So don't miss that. And next Friday on the 21st of April at 2 p.m. GMT, it's all about chartered project management. How to become a chartered project manager. There are so many different roads to achieve the status. Tune in to find out which one is most suitable to you. I recommend, again, you subscribe to the show, where you will join more than 45,000 viewers in the meantime, and we will send you a personal summary of what's coming up and how you can become a panelist yourself and level up your career with APMG. Thanks, everyone. See you on Monday. Bye-bye.